I can hear myself. Now it's on. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call today's regular meeting of the Yountville Town Council to order. It is February the 18th, 2025, and it is 3 p.m. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, council members Knight.
Here.
Tripp. Here. Reeves.
Here.
Vice Mayor McKee.
Here.
And Mayor Mueller.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you very much. And can we all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I'd like to get a motion from the council to adopt today's agenda.
Move adoption of the agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any abstain? Nope. And nobody declined, so that passes unanimously. And next item is council member announcements. Councilmember Knight, you have one?
No, well, just one that through the Cal Cities Policy Committee program, I was appointed to the Environmental Quality Committee. So there's a couple meetings this year before the annual meeting, and so I'll be attending those for environmental quality policy.
Good.
Thank you.
I served on that for 14 years, so I'm glad it's a very interesting policy committee.
I've spent a few years on community services, so they've appointed me this time to environmental quality, which I was happy to participate in as well. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And I just wanted to mention a couple things. I think we'll hear a lot more probably during our staff updates, but on Saturday, March 1st, Yountville is having a parade. We are going to be celebrating Mardi Gras Carnival. So it's going to be, I'll wait for the staff to give you all the details later, but please come out and join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. And also I had the honor of participating at the Yountville Veterans Home last Wednesday for their Black History Month. It was organized by a home member, Buford Johnson, and it was a very nice event. Councilmember Reeves.
I just wanted to mention that we just had another picnic with event, and we had this at the Higher Care Facility of Holderman Hall. It was a really great success, and we're happy to do that, where residents are paired with home members to do a picnic and a one-on-one kind of conversation with peers, basically. And we are in the process of scheduling 3 more events, one in April, one in June, and one in August. So we're going to try and keep ahead so people can plan on these dates, and those will be coming out as soon as we can make sure everybody is on the schedule.
Okay, thank you. Our next item, we have a proclamation, and we're going to be honoring CAL FIRE. And Chief Brian Ham, can you meet me at the podium? Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I appreciate it. It's on? Is this one on? Okay. Yeah. I'm just going to hold it instead of bending over. First, I just want to say I'm very excited to give this to everybody today that's here from CAL FIRE. When I watched everything going on in the television with, with the LA fires, as we call them, I was very, very impressed, and I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to recognize all of our CAL FIRE here in the county. So this is a proclamation honoring CAL FIRE. Whereas in 2025, a series of destructive wildfires affected Los Angeles County, causing California Governor Gavin Newsom to declare a state of emergency and local health emergency in Los Angeles County in response, allowing faster procurement of supplies, mutual aid, and assistance from state and federal governments. And whereas California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE, responded to the Southern California incident to assist in efforts towards the Eaton Fire, the Palisades Fire, the Border 2 Fire, and Watershed Protection Mission, tasking support to the Office of Emergency Services. And whereas CAL FIRE, Sonoma, Lake, Napa, deployed the resources of 11 fire engines, 5 firefighting hand crews, a Firehawk helicopter to Boggs Mountain, 44 overhead support personnel, and the Napa County Fire Engine 10, totaling 158 personnel to assist with the efforts. And whereas, and I hope I get all these names right, if I mispronounce them, I apologize ahead of time. Whereas the following local Napa County personnel responded directly to the incident: Chief Brian Ham, Battalion Chief Robert Wetstein, Travis Gliado, Corey Rodriguez, Juan Avalos, Tony Gonzalez, Jose Vargas, Chris Taylor, Derek Boynton, Paul Bossard, Jake Peterson, Jason Hill, Daniel Flores, Gonzalo Ordonez, Kevin Honag, I think I got that right, Eric Hernandez, Emily Alston, Christian Abalo, Garrett Short, Jordan Neal, Alexander Aralo, Kevin Moa, Pat Everett, Jason Virgil, Spencer Cram, Alan Davies, Logan Elliott, Larry Matz, and Robert Todashing, along with the Napa County firefighters, Mike Carlson, Robert Lutz, Grant Ingalls, Robert Covey, Massey Baldrini, Mikey Henry, Jennifer Simonson, and Francisco Servine. And whereas, recognizing their exceptional dedication, the town will honor CAL FIRE for their actions by celebrating their valiant efforts on this 18th day of February 2025. Now, therefore, let it be resolved. I, Margie Moeller, Mayor of the Town of Yountville, State of California, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the laws of Napa County and California, express our sincere gratitude to the CAL FIRE team for their heroic response to support the efforts of the Los Angeles County wildfires.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, thank you very much for this award. I know I was the person that received this, but I really want to recognize the crews. Mostly this is going to these strong firefighters. They, we had a really busy fire season this summer, and we've really pushed the level of our crews as much as we possibly can, with their mind health and their body health at the forefront to make sure that they're healthy and safe and everything else. We went into base staffing, which is when we reduce our engine and aircraft staffing levels on December 15th. And so on the tail heels of a really busy fire season, these individuals that are in here and in the room with you today, they all raised their hands to go and help. And here in Napa County and Sonoma Lake Napa unit, we really do have the tip of the spear when it comes to our firefighting resources. A big reason why they raise their hands is because they know how devastating these fires are, because we have all been in these things here locally, in our homes. And so for them to step up in the middle of January, beginning of January, is a really heroic effort for these firefighters. And one of the reasons why I point out our firefighting forces, a lot of our command staff is able to go home at night because a lot of us live locally, and we don't have to sleep at a fire station to be ready to go help individuals 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whereas our firefighters, they do. And so the people that it affects the most is their families. Everybody's got families that they go home to. And so for them in the middle of January, right after Christmas, although they probably want to buy more presents for their kids and their wives and husbands, they really stepped up. And their families understand that they have a calling, and this is what we do for a living and for a career, is we go out and we help people around the state of California. So thank you very much for this award. It's very much appreciated to all of us.
Okay, thank you very much. Sure. Yeah, come up here and we'll stand. We'll be taller. Yeah, I know. That's okay. Yeah, you're good.
To get you a stool.
Yeah. They're always giving me whoopee cushions in the county. Good job, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So next is public comment. This is a time for anything that's not going to be on our agenda today. If you'd like to come up and address the council. Seeing no one, we've got 4 items on today's consent calendar, but we're going to pull item 8D. So I'd like to get first see if there any public comment on today's consent calendar. Seeing none, I'll ask the council if they could get a motion and a second to approve consent calendars A through C.
Move approval of consent calendars A through D.
And we're going to pull D, so just A
I'm
through
sorry.
C.
Thank you very much. I move approval of consent calendar items A through C.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? So that passes unanimously. So now we can, since we're going to pull item 8C, is this, Gary, are you going to be giving the, or Brad? Some discussion? Cammie is going
Yeah.
to. All right.
Happy to.
It's the third try. I got it right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank
Right.
you.
Great.
So good afternoon, Mayor and Town Council. Before you are amendments to the existing Zoning and Design Review Board bylaws. In the staff report, addition of the membership section was proposed to clarify appointments to the board, the term of office, and resignation of members. And in response to questions from Town Council, staff have removed 2 additional sections from the bylaws as shown in the highlighted portion of the printout that has been left at the dais for each of you. These include removal of Part D, subsection 2, under Section 3, meetings, regarding the adjourned regular meetings, and this removes the ability for the board to adjourn to a site location. And finally, removal of Part B, tape recordings under Section 4, minutes of the meetings. And this is just an outdated piece where they used to have an audio recording of each meeting, and we no longer do that. We have video recordings instead. So we're just proposing to remove that section. And please let me know if you have any questions.
All right. Thank you. So any public comment on this item? Seeing none, any council questions for Cammie? Vice Mayor McKee.
Thank you. With regards to the membership questions, are these similar to what are in the bylaws for our other commissions and boards?
Yes, that's correct. It's actually modeled after our PRAC right now.
Okay, so
Yes.
we're just bringing this up to speed.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, don't see any more questions. Can we bring it back? Anybody like to make a motion to approve consent item 8D?
Mayor, I'll move approval of consent calendar item D.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on. We have 3 guest presentations this evening. First is a presentation from PG&E, and Mr. Van Gorder is here to speak with us.
Good afternoon. Mark Van Gorder, Local Government Affairs. I am the least important person here today and know that there are a lot of important people right behind us, so we'll try and be quick. I'll just preface the comments by Alex Lee here, who's going to come up and talk a little bit about this in more detail. Alex is the supervisor of electric distribution engineering, so works with the folks that kind of coordinate the design, engineering, and construction. But we've talked many times about the importance of town having more reliable power, about having increased capacity in the future, whether or not it's for electric vehicle chargers, possibly some new services at the Veterans Home or new businesses. But most importantly is the reliability, right? If the power goes out and we have one main line, and we've been here a number of times and talked about that, we've come up with some solutions that I think have provided more reliable power at the south end of town. Nonetheless, sorry, let me shut this off. But nonetheless, trying to find ways to increase capacity and reliability. And so I'll stop there. Alex will be up here to talk. There's 2 slides. The good news is there is a solution. Alex and his folks have come up with it. Our construction teams have completed it. That doesn't mean there won't be any outages. They should be fewer, and they should be shorter in duration. But Alex, do you want to come up and talk about it?
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and present to you PG&E's recent work that we've completed here in support of the town of Yountville. So recently, we've completed the construction of a new circuit line path into the city, as you can see. In the light blue is the old circuit path. As you can see, it comes along the Silverado Trail up and around. It takes a slightly more direct path now along Highway 29 into the city. In that work, we've installed a new substation transformer in 2023, along with another 1.5 miles of new conductor, 1.7 miles of newly installed conductor overhead, and 0.4 miles of newly installed underground cable. What does this bring to Yountville? It does bring increased capacity to the city in the event that, as Mark was mentioning, increased load growth, whether that's businesses, homes, or electric vehicle charging. Also, what it did was bring in 2 circuits into the city of Yountville in the event that there is an outage, something, birds or a car takes out the main line. Now there's an alternate feed where we can send someone out, close a switch, open one, and bring power back to the city much quicker than previously possible. Is there any questions?
I thought there might be some technical questions. If not, that's okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Knight has a question.
Thank you for your report. I'm just curious, in terms of the work you've done, I assume there must be some benefit to the Veterans Home with their new skilled nursing facility. Does this additional power provide more reliability to the Veterans Home as well? Is that a part of the same circuit that to the town, for the whole town?
Correct. So the new circuit will provide additional capacity. So what was previously served by just one circuit, both the city of Yountville and the Veterans Home, is now served by 2 circuits. So you can kind of see in the map of the city That blue circuit, the dark blue circuit, is the new one we've just brought into the town. So the city now is mostly on the dark blue circuit. There are kind of pockets that are served by the old light blue circuit, but having two circuits now gives us more options. As well, it split the amount of power running through a single circuit. So it'll allow the Veterans Home to expand their operations and increase the power usage if needed, as well as we expect the new circuit to have better reliability and be able to switch between the two circuits if it becomes necessary.
Maybe a follow-up. Does one of the circuits, I always thought that one of those circuits, does it originate from Silverado? So it came down Yountville Crossroads, and this looks like the other circuit now comes up north along Highway 29. So they are originating in two different, basically, regions around Yountville?
In this case, no. Both circuits come from our Pueblo substation. So the original feed for Yountville came from Pueblo substation, our Pueblo 2102 circuit. The new one is the Pueblo 2104 circuit. So now two circuits coming from the same substation, but from different substation transformers, which does bring better reliability. In the event that one substation transformer goes out, we have a second transformer at that same substation to back it up. In the event that we do lose power to the substation, we are still tied up to the Silverado circuit, and that light blue circuit is tied to Silverado further to the north. And if deemed necessary by our operations team, we could switch on to the Silverado circuit and substation as well.
Thank you.
So basically, when the power would go out, oftentimes somebody would hit a pole on Silverado. So when somebody hits a pole on Silverado, our power's not going to go off. Is that correct?
The hope is, well, for Silverado, since you're no longer fed or not fed from Silverado, it wouldn't go out. So in the past, what would happen is, it's a pretty long circuit coming along the Silverado Trail Road. I assume that's what you meant.
Right.
Someone hits that. There was no alternate feed to pick up the town because there just wasn't enough capacity on the line. So now we do have enough capacity on the line where if someone hits the pole with their car, we have the capacity and the ability to close a switch and keep the lights on in the town and get, usually a car pole outage is an 8-hour outage. Maybe now, depending on available resources, we can cut that down significantly.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councilmember Reeves.
So the dark blue line is the new circuit, or is that two circuits in one?
That's the new circuits.
Okay. And you are planning to maintain the old circuit as well, the one that comes through Silverado?
Correct. So both circuits are both in service at the same time.
And you're not planning to discontinue the older one?
No, it's part of our ability to serve more capacity in the region is keeping both circuits online and active.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor McKee.
As I understand it, both circuits are coming from the same substation.
Correct.
Currently. Is that Big Ranch Road?
Excuse me?
Is that the one on Big Ranch Road?
I believe so, yes.
If something happened at that substation, I think you said that the Silverado one would kick in.
So we are tied to these Silverado circuits that are in the north, and it all depends on circuit conditions and the availability to move power over to those Silverado circuits.
And if you did that, would the dark blue area have power, or would it only be the teal area?
So I spent 4 years, first 4 years of my career as an operations engineer. So that was what I studied whenever the lights would go out, whether it would be, middle of the day during my shift, or I get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning from our system operators who work 24 hours. And we would study that. And if possible, we would try to pick up all of the light blue and the dark blue area.
You try. So it's not an either or, hopefully.
It's not either or. It's just the ability, depending on the available capacity on the lines, the weather conditions, what's happening on the rest of the circuit. But the Pueblo substation, it's very unlikely that we would see a total outage on the entire substation. It's a rare event. It's fed from our 115 kV line, which is typically built on the steel lattice structures you see, kind of dotting the landscape. So it takes a lot to kind of take those down. And as I was mentioning, luckily both the teal circuit and the dark blue circuit are fed from two different substation transformers as well. So if one transformer in the substation goes out, we still have the second transformer as a backup.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much for coming. It's all great news for Yountville. We'll make sure the Veterans Home gets all the information. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Now we are going to have our quarterly update from Napa County Sheriff's Office, and Sergeant Baumgartner is here to give us that presentation this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. On behalf of Sheriff Ortiz, I'm your local Sergeant, James Baumgartner. I'm here to present the 2024 fourth quarter, October, November, December. Is this the, I might think I'm missing something. Does this go back and forth? Yes. Okay, never mind. Got it, thank you. I like to give the order of you to do it. Okay, first slide here. We had 459 calls for service for these 3 months. Everything is pretty consistent. Fourth quarter, the reports of 11 and the arrests were 4. I'll get into the specifics here. We had 2 separate domestic violence incidents occurred at the hotels here in Yountville. No Yountville residents were involved, and both incidents were alcohol-induced or involved. The assault at the restaurant, that was given to the DA's office and is pending prosecution. The one stolen vehicle you see was the actual dump trailer that was stolen out of the mobile home park. We tried to develop some suspect information, but we were unable to do so. On this slide also, I would like to indicate that the dog at large incident that we had in November, where a resident of Yountville was injured during the incident, and the owners of the dog, the DA's office prepared a notice to abate letter, and it was served to the dog owner, and it was filed with the DA's office and the Sheriff's Department. And the traffic accidents, we had one garbage truck back into the light pole in front of Bouchon, causing some damage to that. There was a couple reports that were not on here because it went to CHP out on the highway, and also the TCs that were involved, minor just property damage where they just exchange information themselves. That's not going to be on the stats. Everything is pretty consistent there on the graph. The training engagements, we had the drug and medication take back day, and a reminder that our substation here has a vault for these medication and drugs 24/7. You can drop off your stuff here in Yountville at the substation. We had the Christmas tree lighting event, and I participated in the Napa Christmas parade and the tree lighting. And I'm preparing a float for our Mardi Gras parade, so
Yay.
Look forward to that. I went to a 911 hang-up call during the rainstorms here and met a lady that, what happens in the rainstorms is the phone lines get all whatever, and then they dial 911. We respond because we can't get a hold of them because the phone line's out. And that resident didn't have an updated list, and actually her deceased husband was the contact, and I went there asking for the husband, and I found out he has since passed. So we're going to create I'm going to update a emergency contact for the residents here and businesses, and people can email me, or when we respond to calls, we're going to get that information when we're there at their house. We had several people come into the substation or call us about the last quarter. I talked about the email scams and the text scams. We did have one resident fall for it. I believe it was about $9,000. But I had multiple people call me and come into the office and talk about it before they actually did it. So we were able to stop some fraud. So that was helpful. Yeah, see something, say something. That's it. Any questions?
No, that's great. I think it's always great that you kind of see something, say something, or a note for the day, because people really do listen to that, and it's very informative. So, and it's good to know that we can really send people over there when we see stuff. I see it a lot on Nextdoor. You guys monitor Nextdoor, though, right?
I do. We actually had an incident come on Nextdoor, and I think the council member who called me, my phone is always on. That thing can get kind of crazy, and somebody put something out, not the truth. We had it under control. But yes, to answer the question, yes, I do monitor.
Because that's good, because there's a lot of, somebody's wondering if it's a scam, and then all sorts of people with all sorts of information weigh in that not necessarily true. So I'm glad you can stop that. So we have a couple questions. Councilmember Reeves.
Could you expand a little bit on the notice to abate for a vicious, dangerous dog? What does that serving of that notice actually require or demand of the resident who owned the dog? So
basically, the letter to abate states that if that dog gets out again and they will receive a misdemeanor citation, and the dog will be confiscated, taken to doggy jail.
Okay.
Councilmember Tripp?
I had a question sort of related to the scam issue. We've had people in Yountville walking around trying to actually sell. I see PG&E is gone. PG&E maybe backed program. They're not PG&E people for batteries in your home. And I don't believe the gentleman had a permit. And one of the neighbors wondered, is that something? I believe you're supposed to have a permit to do that in Yountville. Is that, people are careful. They don't want to burden the sheriff or be calling about stuff. Is that something that my neighbor asked me and I didn't know the answer? Whether they should or could call the substation?
Absolutely. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. And we did get a call. I maybe not this specific thing, but I did contact somebody out door to door, and I kicked him out because he didn't have a permit.
Right, and that seems like good to me, kind of community policing, because you don't really know what people are up to when they're walking around asking a lot of questions. How long have you lived? For a bunch of reasons, it seems to me to be worthwhile that you would respond. But so that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and he was out actually after dark too, so that people are, we did receive multiple calls on that incident, and so that's the reason why he was kicked out, because the lack of permit.
Okay, so for something like that, should people call the Yountville substation number?
They can call the Yountville, the 944-9228, which if nobody is there in the office, it'll roll over into dispatch, and it's not an emergency. It's the non-emergency number in the dispatch.
Yeah, I've had that happen. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you very much for keeping us safe.
You're welcome.
Our next presentation is from the Napa County Cal Fires. It's their quarterly report, and Deputy Chief Greenberg is going to be speaking with us today.
And thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. So this is our quarterly report for October, November, December of 2024. Looking at our stats, this is what our Station 12 ran here in the town, the Vets Home, and in the greater county. So the different areas that they respond to throughout the jurisdiction here. So looking at the calls here, there was 100 calls for service over this fourth quarter in the town of Yountville itself, 178 in the county area, and 155 up at the Vets Home. And so if you take a look here, there's also other graphs that kind of reference where we were last year, where we've been over the last 5 years. So everything has kind of stayed standard as far as what these calls for service are, the different call types, the numbers, and some slight upticks as we've increased, depending on time of year, tourism, and other events. So here's an actual breakdown of the calls in the town of Yountville itself. So you'll see that alarm soundings, and I kind of want to point out something here because we look at these graphs every quarter, but I think there's some trends that we've actually improved on over the last even 10 years. And alarm soundings was a call type that we would go to, fire alarm sounding. We're sending the engines down the road. We show up, it's either a false alarm or some kind of smoke or other problem. 99% of the time, it's nothing. But I would say even 10 years ago, we would have more of these. So you see roughly 19% of those in this quarter were alarm sounding. So systems have improved, and I think that's important that we don't overtax. We don't have the engines going code 3 lights and sirens down through town for a routine, more or less, not a nuisance call, but a false alarm right there. So I think I want to point that out to you that this evolution of technology has really changed. You'll see the medical aids there. That is the majority of our calls that our Station 12 does service. The other one I'll point out is our structure fires. There was 2 reported. One was minor to non in nature as far as damage, but there's one other one that I'm going to talk about later on in the presentation that happened here in the town. Veterans Home, this shows our breakdown of the calls that we serviced for up to the Vets Home. No major changes here, mainly medical aids servicing the members, the residents up there. With that population, the emergencies that they have are severe in nature, whether it's a cardiac event or a stroke or some other kind of fall with broken long bone injuries. The service that's provided up there is greatly appreciated by those residents and our folks over at Station 12. So when they get up there with our partners at AMR, we're getting them the help that they can right away, getting them to a physician, getting them taken care of. So we carry not only the AEDs on there, but also what's called a Lucas device. So that's an actual automated CPR device that we place on patients. It's been a trend here in the county for approximately 11 years, and it's newer equipment. It's expensive, but it's proven to work, and it definitely helps out. We can continue good CPR while we're transporting them to the hospital, but those units are carried on our Station 12 units. So a great improvement that we've used in the county here, and it's proven to be successful. Going into our photos, so you guys have had a debut of our new Truck 12. You were there to help us push it into the bay with that ceremony. So we're working on getting new folks trained on this piece of equipment. Here's a couple pictures of it set up at our tower over by Rector Dam there. And you can actually see the new lighting package that was put on there when we use this tool at nighttime. It really helps us out with good visibility when we're bringing the ladder into buildings, making sure we're not hitting power lines or other obstructions, and then actually the firefighters working off the ladder itself. So that truck is actually getting some warranty work done on it as that period's coming up, and then it should be back hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But we do have our previous old Truck 12 that we're using, and it's still in service helping out the town now. This next slide right here shows our technical rescue team. So we've kind of showed you a couple different disciplines that this team does through confined space, trench rescue. This discipline you're seeing here is actually a shoring exercise, so that in the event of an earthquake, somebody gets trapped, we got to make entry in there. So what they're doing is they're shoring up a building so that they can make access points in and provide a rescue in a safe manner, more or less stabilizing the damaged building or construction so they can get in there. So we're working with the county folks here along with the City of Napa firefighters, and we train monthly, and this is one of the drills that we completed on last quarter. And then some of our events. So the Christmas tree lighting. So we had the pleasure of escorting Santa down to the tree lighting there. Having Truck 12 and Santa on there is always a big hit with the town and all the kids that do show up for it. So great event for that. The next one we're going into is some that many of you joined us for, and this was kind of our first annual, and it was more of an ad hoc event where we do a toy drive every year. We pick a sponsor, we collect the toys, we make sure that they get there in time for Christmas. We put on a hot chocolate event this year, and with some of the donations from the wine train, we were able to put more lights on the station. I think that became a big hit for not only the visitors on the wine train, but those that live here in the town and the public that drive by. We had a lot of visitors this year, so it was great to get that kind of visual and have some station tours happen as well. And here's another slide of our hot chocolate event. I will say a big thank you to Vice Mayor McKee for bringing out our karaoke, and we actually had an American Idol contestant show up there front and center. Definitely found the calling that night, and we greatly appreciate that. It's a little bit dark there, but I think we can probably figure out who that might be.
I think one of your own members was the hit of the night until he was singing and midway got called.
He did,
and he was like, I gotta go.
But that was a fun event. Thank you for bringing that. I think it really helped lighten it up. It was the first one we've ever done. The kids enjoyed being around the fire engine. One of our engineers, his wife donated all the hot chocolate with the Shake Shack. So it just really shows that, you know, the folks here at the station, we enjoy these events, having the public out there and definitely having the music was a lot of fun. And you can see the two kids in the bottom there. They really enjoyed that. So a great event. I'm very positive we'll see that again next year. So one of the things that I want to try to do is highlight some of the new folks that are at the station. So this is engineer Tino LeConte. He started with CAL FIRE back in 2017. He's worked here in the Valley. Very successful. He promoted. He went up towards Butte County, was an engineer up there, and just like all roads, everybody wants to come back to Napa. So Station 12 does a great job with getting a lot of our alumni folks back over here. They love working at the station. They love working in the town. It's very unique in our industry to have this relationship, be able to serve over here, have the nice equipment with engine and Truck 12. So we welcome him back. It was actually him and his wife that actually set up the hot chocolate that night as well. So he came back and he says, hey, I think we're having this event coming up. Let me make a call. So we greatly appreciate him. And there's a couple pictures of him training. So he came back. We got him going through all the skill sheet, getting him all signed off. A lot of work goes into when you promote to be an engineer. You're driving, you're pumping the engines. And so this is Tino out on the drill grounds performing some of those skills. So I mentioned earlier in our statistics one of the structure fires. So this happened in December, right around the holiday season. So this was a call for a structure fire here in Yountville. Our folks were in quarters. They made a quick response over here, and they found flames going up the outside exterior of the wall. So as you can see in some of these pictures, especially one on the right, it was burning through the exterior siding and then making its way into the eave area. And when they got there, they were able to get it knocked down fairly quickly. But with this type of materials burning, it burned so fast, and it had all the air that it needed. So all the components of fire intensity, fire spread, another 2 minutes, and this would have been in the attic. It would have been on the interior walls. But the guys did a great job making a stop on it. There was a hydrant in the area, so if they needed additional water. And then the big thing is the 911 calls. So just like our sheriff partners had said, if you see something, say something, call it in. It's okay if it's a false alarm. We'll come and we'll investigate, but early notification, getting the whole response system going is really key and important, and that happened in this case, and it proved to be a success. Fire's still under final investigation, but a lot of the indicators pointed to exterior Christmas decorations that were plugged in and some kind of fault that happened there where it went undetected during daylight hours too. That was a potential cause or contributing factor to this. So it's just kind of one of those things that we have to monitor, not overloading circuits. Even though you looked at our station, you probably want to maybe question that as well. But something that you do need to monitor, where you're plugging in, what else is plugged in there, making sure that everything's tied into a breaker, extension cords, surge protectors, all those measures go into place for preventing fires as such. A couple other things is traffic collision. So these aren't necessarily pictures from the town of Yountville, but your Station 12 did respond to these. And I think it's just important that, and this ties in with our safety message, that we got to be diligent when we're out on the roadway. And it's not just us ourselves, but it's driving defensively because other distractions are out on the road, whether it's substances, cell phones. Now we have a bunch of potholes out there, so I mean that's a whole nother challenge. But these kind of events are happening. We have all the extrication tools, Jaws of Life, as some of you may have heard of them before. But our Station 12 guys are trained on this. In fact, before they came over today, they were teaching a class to other firefighters on how to perform vehicle extrication so that we can get these folks out. But these are surreal events. These are life-changing for a lot of folks, but this is happening on the roadways, either during the daytime or while you're sleeping, but our folks are out there responding to those. We're going to finish up here with the safety message, and a lot of this has to do with following distance. So, I mean, as the weather decides if it's going to be nice out like it is today or another 10 inches of rain over a 2-day period, a lot of that really ties into driving safety and making sure that you leave enough time when you're going to an event so that you're not in a rush, but driving defensively, watching out for others out on the roadway. The valley's very fortunate to have visitors that are up and down the valley. They're not familiar with it. They're looking for their driveway while they're also trying to make a right-hand turn or left-hand turn, and I think it's just important that everyone pays attention on there. That is the end of our quarterly, and before I take questions, I really want to thank our council as a whole and Brad as our town manager for that proclamation today. That was very special. We greatly appreciate that. The folks that departed earlier, they truly put in a lot of effort for a time of year that really isn't what we would consider an active part of the months of fire season, but that did happen, and they were there to respond. Some other of those folks were part of our Napa County Volunteer Fire Department. They're sheerly volunteers, so they train. They go through all the drills just as your Station 12 folks. They work in the community. They're part of the industry. They have kids in here. When they get a call, they're leaving their place of work or their place of home to come help us in the valley here. And I think this is important that as the town of Yountville, as you're part of this cooperative agreement, you are also getting 9 volunteer stations that are surged to help out here in the valley here in Yountville. So as we're getting this extra help, if something happens here in Yountville, we have these folks. Your closest stations is right up the road in Rutherford. Great individuals, large support for the valley here. And then being able to go down south to LA to help those folks is just as we saw in 2017 and 2020, where those folks from LA came up to help us. So that is the mutual aid system here in California, where we surge those resources to help out those others, but we also have people behind. So while we sent 158 people down south, we had just as many people that worked overtime to make sure that we were covered back here in Napa, Yountville, the greater Sonoma Lake Napa. So it really takes a team to step up so that we can go down, but still make sure the home front's covered. So thank you for that. Greatly appreciated, and I'd be welcome to any questions.
I do have one, and it is related to the LA fires because I probably read too many news articles about it. But I read that some of the fire hydrants couldn't give out water because some fire hydrants are controlled with electricity and some are not. Is that true or false? And do we have any that are require electricity in Yountville? We just heard a great presentation from PG&E. Our power isn't going to go out as much, but I've always been concerned about that. Do you happen to know? We have Public Works over here too, but
yeah, we may have to defer to Public Works. Let me comment on the LA. I know there's a lot of there is a lot of news and speculation out there on, you know, where'd all the water go? Where's the hydrant? So I know that there's going to be reports brought out. Some things that we have to think about is when they put in these hydrant systems, they're designed and laid out and mapped for a certain number of hydrants to be actively supplying water to engines, and not every single hydrant at once. I think if that was the reality and expectation, our pumps and water sources and supplies would have to look totally different. So I think we're going to see a pretty robust report out of LA, how they answer some of those questions, what is the design over there, and then as far as the power itself, the only thing that I can think that would tie into that, and I'll defer to Public Works, is if there's any types of pumps that is actually supplying the water. There's got to be some kind of power source that's boosting the pressure for gallons per minute so that there is sufficient PSI pressure at the hydrants. So there's got to be some kind of mechanical power that's actually providing that to get the adequate pressure, but I will defer.
okay, so it's not necessarily that you can't actuate and get water out of a fire hydrant because it's got some electrical circuit. Is that?
So the town of Yountville's water system is served by Calvet, which has a water tank located over at Rector Reservoir at an elevation that it provides a range of 75 psi via gravity to the entire system. And so we do not rely on an electrical pump to provide the pressure for our water system or our fire hydrants.
Okay. So in their flood areas, they had to. All right, thank you.
And to even support that a little bit further, even the rural county where they're not supplied by municipal systems, code requires them to have a minimum of 2,500 gallons of water on the rural residential property, so that there's what they call a draft hydrant. So it's a fire department connection port. We actually can draft or vacuum out water out of those tanks. So even if there's not a supplied head pressure of PSI to those hydrants, we can actually pull a draft out of there, and our engines are just as effective. In fact, they're rated based off of a draft and not out of supplied pressure from hydrants.
Great.
So if the water's there, we can get that out.
Just add one subject matter, and I know that the fire department's familiar with ISO ratings. It's something that when I got here, Chief Marcucci and I started talking about, and now Chief Ryan, and I know this is a subject which comes back to insurance and other matters, but the ISO rating is mainly dependent on water and staffing levels, really, in terms of your ability to fight fires in certain areas. And I do know we had either a 3 or 2. We felt comfortable we would be at a 2, and we were going to actually strive for a 1, which is the best rating you can get. And it's sort of just a testament to what everyone was just talking about, where at least in Yountville, and I know that the rural areas present other challenges, between having, Station 12 and having the apparatus and the staffing, and then having the water pressure. It puts us in a really good position. So we'll continue to pursue. I haven't talked to Chief Ryan recently about the ISO rating, but I think it's something that also makes a difference to businesses as they try to get insurance, because a lot of people know, especially homeowners, this is going to become more and more a challenge as we continue to have these extreme events where the insurance industry is just under a very another type of burden, but it's something that affects us all. So we'll continue to work on that. But I did want you to know that that's something we've talked about for at least a year, right? Yeah.
And these are the investment that the town has made, whether it's the water system, whether it's the staffing models. I know you guys saw some increases there, but these are investments that are going in to help that ISO rating, that to help and support the insurance, and not only just serve the community members on a daily basis. So well worth it.
And I have another question, a couple more now. Vice Mayor McKee has a question.
Question and then a personal thank you. The question was regarding hydrants. Within the manufactured home communities, are the hydrants that are there in the parks the same as the ones throughout town?
Yeah, they are. So it's all supplied off of a grid system. They may have smaller diameter pipes that go out and then the risers that come up, but in the case for the fire that we had there, it was the same ones that were in town.
Okay, so they would work as well, which
Yes.
is good to know. And then the work that you guys do is so much focus on engineering and rescue and this exciting work. And I want to thank you. I have had a friend that has since passed away, but in January she was gravely ill, and she had 2 times that she was not able to get back into her bed, and your team was called. And her takeaway from that, other than being sick, and she was embarrassed, but one of your team members actually touched her and assured her and gave her a very personal message that she went to heaven with. And I just want to thank your team on a personal note that the difference that you make being there and supporting people does help. So please pass that on. Thank you.
I will. Thank you for sharing that.
Another question from Councilmember Tripp.
As an overall matter, I don't really have sufficient words to thank you and CAL FIRE for what you do for Californians. It is heroic, and your dedication and commitment. So I'll just stop and let you know that many of us recognize that and appreciate it. And then your local commitment is also very wonderful. And I feel we're blessed to be under the CAL FIRE umbrella because it is such a professional organization. And that is really a great thing for Yountville. And also the Santa, I had, for my first trip on the wine train, I got to do the Santa train. And you probably couldn't hear how people went nuts when I kept thinking, I bet they can't hear us as you're waving. But it's really fun. And also the hot chocolate event was really fun. And it was nice. I saw some kids and people that I don't usually see out and about in Yountville. So it was a really fun thing. So thank you.
No, thank you. And I think I can speak for the whole team at Station 12. Them being a part of this community is what makes this place. It really is. For them at the station, I've showed you a couple of the pictures of those vehicle accidents, some of the other tragic events that they deal with. But being able to be at work and be with you folks, with the town, having the kids come by, there is a sense of therapy that comes with the other part of the job, because I think a lot of the other parts of the job don't actually get put out on TV. The events down in LA, the stuff that's happened here, these folks go back to their families when they get time. They live with this. There is no acceptance of defeat in our job. We are going to strive to do everything that we can. Obviously, Mother Nature may have a different venue for us that proves otherwise, as you've seen, and that doesn't sit well. So having this other side that we can be a part of this community, anything with food, gatherings, like this is what Station 12 is. This is who we are. We enjoy it just as much as the community here as well. But thank you for that.
It's always the Mardi Gras parade if it's not too.
It's on deck.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It's always great to have people like yourself keeping our community safe.
All right. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
All right. Tonight, this afternoon, we do not have any public hearings. We have 3 administrative items. Let's go to the first one, administrative item 11A. We're going to consider adopting a resolution related to our mid-year budget adjustments. We see some of our financial folks, and Kyle.
Thank you, guys. I will introduce Kyle Batista, who's getting his placard. And I think, let him provide the report. One thing I think is important, because this is our first mid-year budget that we've done in a biennial or 2-year budget. And I think even internally we're sometimes struggling with the terms, but I think it's important to understand the mid-year, which is something all cities in California do every year. This is sort of when we look at the financials midway through the year and make adjustments as needed. And then what you will be hearing about after, which we intend to, we're targeting May 20th, the mid-cycle budget. So the mid-cycle will be the midway cycle between the 2-year process. Okay, so you got the mid-year, which you do every year, the mid-cycle, which you do every other year. So with that, you can take over the mid-year, Kyle, and we'll see you in a few months on the mid-cycle.
Perfect, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Town Council. Kyle Batista, Financial Analyst for the town. And today I'm going to be presenting the mid-year budget adjustment for the current fiscal year 24-25. Recently, town finance staff met with the department heads to perform an in-depth mid-year budget review. And the purpose of this review is to analyze individual accounts for any unforeseen cost increases or unexpected activity, and if necessary, present to council any budget adjustments to realign our original budget with anticipated actual activity. So like Town Manager Ralston was saying, this is a very routine process, and since I've been here, every year we've presented the mid-year budget adjustment. So the staff report does discuss a few general fund and other fund accounts in need of budget adjustments. Town staff is requesting a total net increase of $19,517 to general fund revenues. This is across 3 different accounts. And each of these 3 revenue adjustments have a corresponding expenditure adjustment that's also in this report that offsets the revenue requests. So this results in no impact to the original budget general fund balance. And moving on to the general fund expenditures, town staff is requesting a total increase of $270,191 to general fund expenditures. This is for items that were higher than anticipated. A couple examples were annual insurance premiums, workers' comp, liability, property insurance, as well as utility costs at the Yountville Commons. So items that we budgeted for, but they came in a little bit higher than anticipated. As well as unexpected costs that we did not anticipate, such as approved increases to part-time and other salary costs that took effect January 1st, 2025, and the emergency repairs to town generators and the geothermal piping system at the community center. So the net amount of the requested general fund revenue and expenditures budget adjustments is $250,674. And to cover these budget adjustments, town staff recommends using the town's general fund assigned for budget contingency fund balance allocation. This is money that when we prepare the budget, we specifically set aside for this purpose. And currently, the balance of that allocation is $557,793. And we're requesting to use $250,674, which would bring the balance down to about $307,000. Moving on to other non-general funds, town staff is requesting budget adjustments for items such as regulatory consulting costs for the treatment plant to renew for the permit renewal process, as well as the Public Education and Government TV Fund 21 for purchasing and installation of display monitors to modernize the noticing of town meetings, as well as increasing the budget in the Measure T Fund 25 for the Measure T portion of the Washington Street Corridor project. So that summarizes the staff report, and I'm open for any questions.
All right. Thank you very much for that. We have a question from Council Member Tripp.
It's a very clear memo. Thank you. Can you just review the Fund 25, the increase of the budget by $904,000? I know that, right. Where do those monies come from?
That's a great.
And this is not something we missed, I'm guessing.
Great question.
So maybe you could just expand on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So at the beginning of the year, we budgeted $550,000 for Measure T usage. Okay. And then over the years, we received the Measure T monies. There has been no increase to Measure T that we've received, but a couple examples is fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24. We received about $680,000, then we spent $350,000. Public Works team, I think, did a really good job of planning for it. They knew a bigger Washington Street project was going to be coming up. So this uses up existing fund balance in the Measure T Fund 25. So we're just now coming to you requesting to release the fund balance that they have been building up.
Okay, so it's money that was already in the fund. And Measure T, is that through NVTA or where does that money come? It's a
correct. Yes, that's
county.
Correct. It's the county pool, and the town of Yountville receives, I believe, 2.6 or so percent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
2.7.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
So in the future, you'll be hearing it's Measure U. That's what we all voted on in November. So
correct.
Measure T becomes Measure U. Funny. Okay. That's all the questions we have. Did we have any public comment on our mid-year budget adjustment item? Yes, please, come on up.
Thank you, Alan Tencher. That was a great report. So I think I even followed it. This is a mid-term adjustment, of which we had $550,000 set aside.
Correct.
And now we're going to use $250,000 of it, leaving $307,000. So what happened? When is the next opportunity to dig into that $307,000? Or not that we want to, but I just want to understand when would the next event like this happen? And then second question, what happens if we need more than the $307,000? Thank you.
Great questions. So I would say the answer to number one, with our mid-cycle coming up in May, that's probably going to be the next time. So finance staff will be working over the next few months digging into it. And a little bit of background on that. So the general fund, which is fund one of the town, that's all non-restricted tax money that comes in, mostly TOT tax. And that at the end of the year, when we have our beginning fund balance for the previous year, we have our projected revenues and our projected expenditures, and then we have an ending fund balance, and then we allocate that ending fund balance. So this $557,000 is just one bucket of the allocated ending fund balance. So there are different buckets also. So all we are using up is a small bucket that we set aside for budget contingencies. We're not exactly sure what's going to be happening. So we'll be revisiting all of those individual buckets and performing analysis to figure out how we're going to be ending the year. Best guesses. So that would answer the number one. Answer number two, I'm going to pass on to Town Manager Ralston.
I think traditionally what Yountville has done, which is I think fairly typical, is that we wait for the audit results, because remember, these are budget numbers and we're looking at a picture in time. So we make judgments at the mid-year that we just went through. The mid-cycle will be a shorter version of looking at next year's annual budget and fiscal year. Towards the end of the year, we get our audit results towards the end of the calendar year. Once we know exactly what those are, there is a bucket. We like buckets of unassigned fund balance. Unassigned fund balance is ultimately what's the surplus. And there has historically, as you know, been a surplus here in the town. And at that point, we come to council and we make a recommendation and request that get assigned, either into reserves to increase our reserves or into capital projects or anything else the council desires. So that typically is like a November, December thing. So that's kind of how the whole cycle works.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I remember the allocation of the unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, we had $3 million to allocate this past November, which we did, and I'm sure you were here. You were one of the people that were here listening. Yeah.
And then, and just, every now and then it's not common that something might come up during the year that wasn't budgeted, and so that's comes before the council, and we can make a decision at that time whether to, if it wasn't in the budget, to add it and look at our reserves, some way to pay for it. So, Councilmember Tripp, question?
So the 500,000, Kyle, is because I remember this line item. I think in the budget, it's a 10% sort of thing that every year, as I understand it, we add basically 10% of the budget as a contingency. Is that correct?
I don't think it's 10%.
It's per the town fund balance policy, it's 5% of general fund expenditures.
Thank you. And I've not been here over that many cycles, but typically the town does not end up spending that in its entirety. Is that correct?
Correct.
As a general statement.
Correct.
Right. So, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Knight?
Thank you. I had a similar question about the Measure T funds. So thank you, Councilmember Tripp, for asking that question. I just, you're going through these budget items. It prompted a question about, in the one line item about liability, annual insurance premiums. I just wondered, just like residential homes have been impacted by liability and fire insurance, have you municipalities been impacted in our fee structures having to do with liability or fire that has had some impact on these increases?
We can get some more information from CIRA, formerly Parsac. We go through CIRA to figure out exactly what, but we've definitely seen an increase in costs over the years.
Okay, good. So that'd be interesting to look at maybe during the mid-year budget review. So thank you.
Yeah, CIRA, for those that don't know, is our risk pool. So we joined together with, there's probably about 100 members, I would say roughly, of CIRA, which are municipalities and special districts. So experience definitely matters. And I will tell you that the fires in LA will make a huge difference. That usually has about a year shockwave in terms of how it affects premiums and what have you. But the system that we're in is a good system. But each year, just like us, they do budgeting and they have to go to the reinsurers and go to the whole market to determine what the costs are going to be, and that will have a trickle-down effect to us, no question.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And so let's see. So we want a motion to approve this tonight. Okay, so we need a motion from the council and a second.
I move approval of resolution number 25-4342, approving mid-year budget adjustments for fiscal year 24-25.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Oh, should we use our buttons? Okay.
That passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. And our second administrative item, this is the consideration of a ordinance to amend our municipal code regarding potentially dangerous and vicious animal and enforcement of the same ordinance. And this tonight, if we are interested, will be just the first reading, and so we can waive the first reading of that, and then it will come back a month later for final approval. So with that, who's going to get us started? I see Aaron's name on the
Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to.
Okay. Town manager.
We started this before Aaron got here, so I will, although it is a planning item, I'll just quickly introduce it.
Okay.
We still have Sergeant Baumgartner here, who addressed earlier in his report the recent abatement notice that went out for the aggressive dog in town. And I think that incident provoked this discussion as well in terms of, do we have all the tools that we need to address those types of situations? So, I actually reached out to Gary Bell, our town attorney. He looked at, there's been a bit of a iterative process here that has gotten us here today. But what was embedded in our in Chapter 6 of our municipal code was, in essence, the county's ordinance, which is still in effect. I want to make sure that everyone understands what we're proposing here is to actually augment that to provide some additional local tools, but we intend to follow the same path that we have used. The sheriff is equipped to deal with animal control and obviously the courts and certain things that come into play here. And I think, this simply, what we're proposing, again, offers a local tool. If there are issues, whether it's staffing issues at the county, different things that can occur at that level, we have some remedies now at the local level, assuming that you adopt this, that would give us the ability to address and enforce these amendments. So with that, I'll let Gary expand on what we're doing.
Yeah, I would just add that this process is in addition to all of the other enforcement options that the town currently has. So this process, and I'm sure you've all reviewed Chapter 6.16 of the Napa County Code that you'd be incorporating by reference. It has a process for notice to the dog owner. There's a hearing that's held, and then after that hearing, there can be conditions placed on the dog. So you can do things like insurance or keep it on a leash or keep it at your house, different things like that. And so it would depend on what the facts are from that, but it could also include abatement of the animal, and so actual seizure and destruction of the animal. I understand from speaking to the sergeant it doesn't happen very often, but it is an option that's in here. I'll also note that the town has a contract with Napa County Animal Services for the shelter. You'll be seeing that soon as well. At a future meeting. One of the things in there is it requires the town to maintain substantially similar provisions to Title VI of the Napa County Code. So that includes things like Chapter 6.16 that you'd be incorporating by reference here, and so this relates to a future agenda item as well, so I thought I'd note that piece. But we did also include in this ordinance that's in front of you that the town would be able to enforce this like any other violation of the municipal code. You have in Chapter 9 of your municipal code nuisance conditions already. One of those pre-existing is dangerous animals. So you could also treat this as a nuisance, similar to what the sergeant did as well. And then you can issue fines and penalties up to $1,000 a day for violations of that and your abatement order. You could also go to court, and there's also criminal enforcement too. Dog off leash is a misdemeanor under your municipal code. It has been for a very long time, and sometimes gets enforced administratively and could theoretically be enforced civilly or criminally as well. So lots of different ways to approach this. This is one more tool that can be used, and that, of course, the sheriff you contract with for law enforcement is very familiar with this process, and many other jurisdictions in the county use it as well. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let's take questions from the council first on this. Councilmember Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe this is a question for the town attorney. So this introductory ordinance, as you mentioned, incorporates components of the county code. Was it Chapter 6.16? So, we're a city within the county. We use the sheriff. We contract with the sheriff. What would a resident or that was a victim or someone being accused, what would be as with this ordinance in place and with our continuing relationship, as you mentioned, with the county, what other interactions would someone see, if a process started with the town, like with the sheriff, in terms of hearings, or how does that work between the town and the county then happen, and who would be involved in maybe some of those processes, like a hearing, or if someone would challenge the decision?
Well, that might be a joint question for your town attorney and your town manager, but I will take the town attorney portion of this. It will depend on how and what is being enforced and how you're choosing to approach this, right? So if the town is only issuing a fine or a penalty, that would be handled administratively. It would go to a hearing officer if it were appealed. If the town is choosing to use the procedure in this 6.16 to hold a hearing and impose conditions and potentially abate the animal, that would be a notice that would come from animal control in conjunction with the sheriff, and then a hearing would be held by a panel that's actually appointed by the supervisors, and they would then hold a hearing that would be noticed, and they would be able to attend that. And then after that hearing, there would be some kind of order that would come, including an order to the property owner, the dog owner, on how to comply with that order. So there is due process, there are hearings, but it depends a little bit on the process you take. And if you took a direct civil action or criminal action, of course, that would be directly in court and wouldn't be either of those two options.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that, because as you mentioned, it's just depending on what actions are taken, it gets either much more complex and involves a lot of other agencies, but it's dependent on the situation and either the actions of the victim or the town town.
Yeah, and it also depends on what level of, what is the town seeking in code enforcement, right? Whenever code enforcement officers here at town are looking at a violation, how serious is it? What sort of corrective measures do you want? And then what level of enforcement do you think is needed to achieve compliance, right? Will a warning letter suffice? Is it going to be a fine? Does it require something more serious? And so any of these tools could be used at the beginning or at later stages as well. But yeah, it depends a bit on what the town's goals are, and then what level of enforcement is needed to achieve those.
I have maybe another continuing question. So, like I said, maybe that creates another question. So where is that process? So there's different steps, but the town may be taking steps that someone that was impacted may not feel is strong enough. At what point, where does that decision occur, whether it's an action or it's a notice or a letter, or it becomes more involved with the sheriff or is that really a part of what we're reading here in the chapter 6.6 of if an action occurs, then the sheriff may be able to take action, or
town staff, either one. Currently, you have administrative enforcement under Chapter 8.05, and that is a decision by a code enforcement officer under the direction of your town manager. So your town manager would be in contact with the sergeant and would understand the facts and figure out an enforcement plan to achieve compliance. And then, in particularly severe cases, it could be authorization from you all to seek some sort of court redress or some sort of injunction or other things. So I think it's your town manager working with sergeant, working with code enforcement staff to figure out what is the best path forward.
Thank you.
Councilmember Reeves.
I think I'm interested in the early steps of how this will go for a resident and a dog owner, for instance. So maybe this is a sheriff question, I'm not sure, because it seemed like there needed to be more clarification of who is on first, right? Who is enforcing and when. So if a resident has a problem with a dog, and so who do they report that to? What steps get taken from that report? And what kind of expectations should the resident have of some sort of resolution?
Want me to take this one?
Yeah,
I
sure.
feel like you've been. I think, I hate to always it depends, but it does depend on what obviously a barking dog versus a vicious dog,
Right.
Two different things. I think both cases probably it'd be a call to non-emergency line, unless obviously the vicious thing was violent and there was an incident. So I think there's a spectrum. Here's maybe how to sum things up based on the last series of questions. I think what we had before worked. This incident sort of provoked us to think about it, but it wasn't moving at the pace that the community wanted, because it was like, we need to do something now. And I was working with the sheriff's office, and it was taking time because they have to work through the courts, and they have certain things they have to, go through in order for this to be what it became. This abatement order that was, legally served on this dog owner, and now they're in essence like have a final warning. While we were sorting that out, which took several months, we had this conversation about how do we strengthen our ordinance. And I think in the cases that either the sheriff is unwilling to act or it's taking too long, this gives us, and specifically me, the ability to, work with Gary to figure out what local remedies we have. So again, it depends on what level, but I think this kind of created the conversation on both levels, and I think we were prepared to be the backup, but it was not necessary because the county sheriff did ultimately what was, we think, the appropriate step for the incident that occurred.
So it will broaden our options of how to act?
Correct.
Okay, so in a way, it's not just adopting a current code from the county, it's really expanding our ability to act.
Yes.
Okay.
And Councilmember Tripp, question?
I was interested, Gary, in the $1,000 a day. These fines sometimes don't seem like they're enough, but what I'm learning is they're governed by lots of laws. So is this one of those, or do we have more latitude?
It is governed by a state law that caps it. So the state legislature decides the maximum amount of your fines and penalties, and that's the maximum penalty.
I had a feeling. Thank you.
So the last question I have, just for a little more clarification. So a lot of the provisions that we're adopting from the county we could make a decision ourselves to do all of those actions on our own. But,
Yep.
okay. But
Yeah, that is correct. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's quite all right. So that part is answered. But to do that is quite onerous on a small town like this. So we'd have to have a lot of boards in place and a lot of other. We don't really have control over the county animal control system or any of that. And in a way, because I kind of thought about that, it's like, well, is that something we should even really consider? And I kind of rejected it because I really like the idea that even though it might be considered by some to be a little more onerous to do that, it gives an impartiality that, you know, is really, I think, fair to both the dog owner as well as the injured party. So because sometimes those emotions, you know, sometimes it's hard to make those decisions, and having some impartiality, I think, is probably the best way to go. So that's where I kind of came up with on when I was kind of considering that. So.
Yeah, that is right. Many cities and towns do have their own version of this, and is administered by the city or the town. The same basic concepts, though, would apply, which is if you want to declare it dangerous and impose conditions or order it abated, you need to give notice and hold a hearing, and you'd have to have an impartial hearing officer, whether that's a board or if it's an outside hearing officer, to come in and hear that case, and then impose those conditions or abate the animal, and then also enforce those orders as well. And so, yes, it is possible. Your sergeant, though, is very familiar with this, as is the entire sheriff's department for what they do countywide. So there's a little bit of crossover there, having them administer what is essentially an existing program throughout the county.
But much like we have county sheriff and county fire, this is what is in here now. So I understand that part too. So. Let me go to public comment. Would anybody like to come up and address the council on this item? You could just give us your name, and the mic is on.
Left-handed still. Thank you, council members, mayor. Trying not to get emotional. This has been a really rough 3 months since the attack on me and my dog. And I appreciate you evaluating the ordinance because it's so important to the rest of the community. I have questions. A lot of them, I suppose, have already been semi-answered, but after reading the new proposed ordinance, I've been reading a lot. Is it possible to make it more concise, I guess, when you're taking Napa's ordinance and to your new one and there's so many references to different sections. I guess I would love to see it more concise with results. I didn't know what the fines were. If there's no mention, I could not find what $1,000 a day fine was. I guess I would just like to see something more condensed, easy to read, and to the point. I couldn't even find where there's the leash law. I couldn't find that, and that's obviously one that should be there if it's not there, but should be there in there. With regarding to section 6.16.040, I'm really concerned with the enforcement here in town. I think we need to empower our sheriff more. When I called Animal Services following this, I felt disrespected. They were dismissive and aloof, and I was very distressed at their response. Animal Services from Napa never followed up with another call. They never came to visit me to see my dog, to see my situation. I did meet with Mr. Sheriff Baumgartner, and he was helpful, came to my house, but I felt he had his hands tied as far as how much he could do. It was going back to Napa. So in making this new ordinance, I would suggest and hope that you could give our local sheriff more authority and direction how to handle something like this. Such as, I think, is it E3 for reimbursements also. I don't know. I still have, my insurance company has paid some of my medical bills. I have an ER bill from the Queen for $19,000, and at this point, they're not reimbursing me. I don't know how to get that from, if it's possible. And lastly, I know this is maybe a big request, but I would like to propose to the town to have a ban on pit bulls. There are I've read there's 4 other cities in California, Gilroy, Manteca, Hollister, and Lancaster, that currently have a ban. There are 31 states in the U.S. that have some sort of ban on pit bulls. After this accident, I've heard many horrifying stories of deaths and injuries from the breed. And I feel strongly, this is the second time I personally have been attacked. Granted, it was 25 years ago, but here in town by a pit bull. And my dog almost died. He was a smaller dog, so he had less opportunity to survive versus my current dog. I think for the town, it's something that you really should consider. You know where you walk your dogs. I don't walk my dog in the vicinity anymore. And sadly enough, I was told not to walk my dog there anymore. That was the choice I had to deal with that dog. So I think there needs to be a little improvement and enhancement, and I do appreciate your looking into this. I know it's taken a lot of time, but it's, I think, very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else from the public like to come up and address the council on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for further discussion and possible action. So, Councilmember Tripp.
I support this ordinance. I see it as giving us an additional option should we need it to, for whatever reason, to proceed beyond what the county ordinance says. And I would like to assure Ms. Mason that when the contract comes up for animal services for the county of Napa, we need to find out why they did not respond to this, because we do have a contract and that's what we're paying them for. And they have professionals who handle dogs and know dogs and should have come. So that I find that quite disturbing. The whole thing is obviously disturbing, but that is quite disturbing. And I would, though, like to, I know Sheriff Baumgarten spent a lot of time on this, and I'm very appreciative. And it's a difficult situation. I had a run-in, I'm not sure if it was the exact same dog, but it was a pit bull in that exact same area. And it was terrifying, so I understand that. Fortunately, I wasn't injured or my dog. But I do think we need, and in answer to your other question, maybe we need to have a section on our website that clarifies the Yountville rules regarding dogs, you know, in terms of on leash, the nuisance provisions, this ordinance, potential fines, so that in clear ordinances by their nature, I must say, they do get complicated in part because the landscape is so complicated of all these laws, but we could lay it out clearly, and we should. And I would even be up for putting those policies on a placard. Eventually, we're going to have a board, kind of a notice board down at the dog park, and put it up there so that people, not that we have not had any bad behaving dogs, at least that I'm aware of at the dog park, but people need to be aware of the consequences. And I'm truly sorry for your experience. I know that doesn't go very far, but I'm really sorry.
Councilmember Reeves.
I would like to go back to some of the comments about giving the sheriff more local control. So does this ordinance that we're proposing to adopt, does that give the sheriff more latitude than he already has, or does that give us more power to request more backup from the sheriff?
I'd say both. This process is not currently in your code, so if you brought this and incorporated by reference, you'd now have this process for the first time, and that would be something that the sheriff could use and the county could use for future cases. And it's also something that the town could use and refer over to the county. So.
Yeah. Okay, and I also very much support the idea of this discussion when the animal control contract comes up. The other question is, I don't want to hold up this resolution for a discussion of pit bulls, but I would like to bring that back at a later date just to sort of get more input on that discussion item, because I think it has been nationally noticed that pit bull breed is kind of not compatible with children and people of all sorts. So I think we need to have that discussion, because as our population is aging, we're less likely to be able to run, bend, do whatever to get out of the way. And if this kind of a dog is prone to aggressive behavior, that's a discussion we need to have.
Councilmember Knight.
Thank you. I guess I'd like to also follow up, and I support this introduction of this resolution, because I think it is providing more opportunities for the town to respond. But just maybe addressing some of the questions of the resident that spoke, Ms. Mason, when, like, for example, in a portion of the county code 6.16.040, where it talks about the officer shall determine whether an animal is potentially dangerous, that references back in their document to the animal control, a chief animal control officer or someone duly deputized. But just to clarify, if an incident occurs, what is the clear steps either the victim or the dog owner would have, and who would be the person that they would primarily speak to, and how would that action eventually lead to this, an officer as a part of the code taking action? What is the specific step so that person would know what they expect to see happen from the town or the county?
I think the first thing I'll say on that, and this might be some opportunity for you to step in, Sergeant, because it goes back to, it depends on what it is. But I think there's clarification of terms. I want to make sure I'm getting it right. The sheriff's office oversees animal control, and then we have an animal services contract with the county, which is in essence the pound, if you will, or so these are two totally different things. So I think we're kind of using them both together. So animal control under the sheriff, that is where if there is an incident reported, there's a protocol and process that you follow that maybe you can speak to. I will look at our animal services contract in terms of that's generally where they would take strays if there was strays, which I know we don't really have any strays here. It's a different thing, right? And if you understand the distinction, I think we have to be clear about that. But maybe you can speak to the animal control part and how you utilize animal services as needed.
Yes. James Baumgartner here, Sergeant Yountville. Animal services is civilians that drive the white trucks, the box trucks. And then it's overseen by a sergeant with the Sheriff's Department, Sergeant Dave Quigley. And everything is ran through Sergeant Quigley. He writes the notice of the abate notice that was prepared to the DA's office. He does all that. He attends all the hearings. He issues the citations. The animal control officers do that under his direction. And he assisted me with this notice because they handled the call and they were done with it, and it was no, we're not done with it. We need to do more, and that's we were able to get that notice of abate. And I would just like to also make a comment to you to let you know that I have changed things with our animal services as well. When the animal services handles calls throughout the county, the sergeant on duty we're not even notified. Now, if they're dispatched to a call in Yountville, I will be notified of every single animal control call in Yountville. So hopefully
I appreciate that. I want to further clarify terms because Celia helped me with one other word. So I think animal control services is what, and then animal shelter services. So think of animal shelter and animal control as two different things because we keep using the word services. So I think I don't want us to get lost. But yeah, that goes through the sheriff's office, was explained, and then we do have a contract with the county as well to do an animal shelter. And so I think when the call was made, it was to Animal Services. Whoever took the call did not follow up appropriately, and I know that Sergeant has made a point of correcting that.
Okay. I just wanted to make some general comments first too. So I know for kind of the lay person, even for a new council member, it takes a while to. These ordinances sometimes can be a bit befuddling to the general public when you look at them, but they are set up in such a way that when we really do need to take action or enforce something, the help of our legal team, they do stand up and they can be enforceable. So with that said, I do know that I'm not sure how we can go about that because when something like this comes up, you really don't know what to do. So I don't know if we can come up with some kind of executive summary to maybe put on or frequently asked questions on our website, just with if this happens, who do you call? And then who do you follow up with? And just a few bullet points about some general action items. And then you can always reference this ordinance, which then goes into all the other subcodes. So something like that might be useful. And I too support this. And thank you very much to our sheriff for following up. It's like sometimes things just do fall through the cracks, but when they happen to you personally, that's just not okay. So I think that this really will help us a lot. The ban on pit bulls, I'll admit, when I see a pit bull, I'm concerned too. It's just like, but on the other hand, I know another pit bull that lives here in town, and I can't tell you, this is like the sweetest dog I've ever met. So I want to be fair to pit bulls too. One of the, we have a leash law. Quite frankly, we really don't enforce it, and that's by choice. We've just never have really done it because we know the person usually, we know the dog, and it's just running around and it's not really doing anything. So it's never been a problem. So most problems aren't a problem until they are. We also have on the books that your dog needs to be licensed. So Napa County, I get my license every year for my dogs, and they're like, oh, you don't have to bother, no one else does it. It's like, nope, I'm going to do it. I kind of like to follow the rules. So I'm just saying that, if we had more information from, dog licenses, we'd know how many pit bulls we had in town. So, banning them and knowing where they are and knowing who's dangerous, I don't know. It's just a very difficult one because I know some other dogs that, have been killing cats and they were attacking people, and I think they were a totally different breed, and we had a lot of problem about a year or two ago. So I think an education, on pit bulls for maybe, for the whole general public. I'm not sure how we'll find like a Cesar Millan from the TV show guy to, come and talk to us about, the pros and cons about you know, when the dog is really dangerous, and you know, there are certain breeds that I understand are extremely dangerous. So I think an education piece, I think, would be maybe some place to start. I'm not quite ready to ban a breed yet, because you never know. It's just a step away from the breed that you have might get banned too. So
Not yours.
you know,
No golden.
well, she'll knock you over, and she could be crazy. So anyway, but somebody might think that's vicious, and maybe not. So anyway, those are my comments. So yes, please come back up, Megan.
Follow up with the Napa County. I still never had any answer, response, or follow up as to what happened with this dog. I didn't know if he had rabies, if he had license, if he was quarantined, or nothing. So I feel that there was a real drop there because there's no follow up. Sorry.
Okay, well, maybe we can ask staff to follow up and get you as much information as we can get, working with the sheriff on that. It's very reasonable. Find out what they've got, get it to you. Okay, so any more discussion, or are we ready to make a motion? Somebody like to make a motion regarding this ordinance? Or you can keep talking.
I would move the first reading of the ordinance, number 25531.
You'll waive it?
And waive the reading. But I would also like to ask staff to bring back the discussion of the pit bull breed as a dangerous dog discussion. It doesn't have to be in association with this, but I feel like it would be a good thing for the town to discuss, and it might be that we come out of that discussion not banning a pit bull, but we should have the discussion.
So is that part of your motion?
Well,
if I can ask, you could separate the two. I mean, I think vote on the ordinance, and then it would be nice if you did want us to come back. I just conferred. You can, of course, ban breeds, and I think there was a reference made. But I think I'd want to have clear direction from a majority of you that you want us to come back with that. And I would also say, and this is where I'm looking to you, Gary, is that if there is a clear majority that wants to consider that, you know, I don't want to keep bringing back the dog ordinance. I feel like this would maybe then be, if, again, separate vote, you decide we could consider that in the second reading. Is that something, or would that have to be a do-over?
It would have to be a separate ordinance, so we could bring a first reading of that ordinance at your second reading, and these are separate topics, so that would make sense.
Okay. So maybe, vote on the ordinance, and then maybe give direction through.
I will amend my discussion point and just move the first reading of the ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay, we're going to use our buttons, okay?
Mayor, just I know we have a motion in a second just for a quick discussion, and I just wanted to appreciate your comments about the importance of maybe staff creating some type of executive summary. And I think we have to take the opportunity, having the dog park, to be able to provide more information to the community, survey them, and explain to them what we're approving here, and get more word out to the community so that they can share with maybe even neighbors that have dogs that don't visit the dog park. But I think it's what we can do to provide more information out there to the community, and signage even at the dog park I think would be beneficial. So I appreciate that suggestion you made.
So what kind of signage, like an executive summary that now we have a dangerous dog ordinance, and like, if you see that, here are the steps and who to call?
And I think providing information to maybe the committee that works, it's volunteer residents that are involved with the dog park, to be able to provide information to people that visit there when they have events or things like that would be helpful. So anyway, just a suggestion to staff to help with to provide that information.
So are we clear on that?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Nope, time to vote.
That passes unanimously.
Okay, so another discussion regarding pit bulls. So what would the council like to do? So I'll let you make your proposal.
I would say that I'm not interested in having staff create an ordinance until we have some kind of workshop discussion about whether or not that's a thing we want to do. So I'm looking to talk about what the insurance requirements are for dogs such as pit bulls, talk about what other communities do for enforcement, and that kind of a discussion rather than a legal discussion of an ordinance. I don't know what everyone else's thought is on this. So first off, right now, we need to know if there's a majority who want that discussion. If they're not, then that's fine too. So we need to move from there.
Yeah. I'm always been curious how many pit bulls we even have in town. I know of 2. But anyway, that's maybe neither here nor there. Councilmember Tripp.
I would be willing to have the discussion. I do think it is a very difficult discussion because, as the mayor alluded, I know several pit bulls who are sweet dogs, and I know some pretty vicious poodles, truthfully, and chihuahuas. But the difference is pit bulls can inflict huge damage that a chihuahua can't. So I'm willing to have the discussion. It's not something I would necessarily leap to, but I would be willing certainly to listen. And in terms of the licensing of the dogs, is that a Yountville? I know it's a county thing, but do we also have an ordinance in Yountville that says dogs have to be licensed? It's probably the county. Enforcement.
I believe it's just the county.
Okay.
So but that, because it's county.
Oh, no, I'm not arguing, but I thought maybe you said Yountville had an ordinance. And
No, Yountville, it's the county. Plus, it's also on the rules on the entrance to the dog park. Your dog needs to be licensed.
Is it? Oh, yeah. I did not know that.
That was, Anyway, so I'd be, open to, something like, I really want to get an expert in here about a dog behaviorist, somebody who's, really knowledgeable. And so, maybe we're calling out, one breed because of, what we're discussing here tonight, but, maybe there are others that maybe it would be very informative, to our public to know. So I don't think there's any urgency. I'm not sure where you get that type of person, but, maybe you could find it. Somebody who would, we could have a general discussion. I'm not ready to take that leap yet because I think it's too difficult. We really haven't had a major problem like some of the other jurisdictions that, I can imagine, people use them for, fighting and some really horrible types of things for dogs. So that's my opinion. So let's go down the line here.
Thank you. I know when we first moved to town and into Rancho, there were rules that said no terriers. So knowing that a pit bull is a terrier, I think that has changed. We do have one that lives in the community, and it's the kind of dog that rolls over on its back and goes like, oh, pet my belly. But we do have other terriers, like the Spuds McKenzie dog, that the owner has him on a grip just to walk by my window because I have a cat at the window. So, it's a broad term. It should be discussed. It's all about the breeding, though, and it would be an interesting discussion. As Hillary said, they do damage, though. So that's the difference. That they can inflict a lot of damage. And I'm sorry that you dealt with issues and negligence from the county. That was insult to injury, quite literally. So I would discuss it, yes.
Mayor, I'm not ready to see an ordinance before us, but I definitely am interested in a workshop where we invite the community and we, as you mentioned, I'm not sure if we're looking to see what's happening in Napa County, if there are speakers that could come from animal control or the animal shelter or other or dog trainers in the valley that may provide information to the community, but I would be interested in that.
Staff have clear direction?
If I can read the room and sort of offer a suggestion, two things. First of all, our communications director will hopefully be back in about a month. I know, I just saw her. She owns two. What are those?
Pug dogs.
French bulldogs.
Yeah.
She's a dog person. But I do think the opportunity for education is always there, and I think just it's a staffing issue to some degree. I don't want to even look back at Aaron right now and say, how do you feel about an ordinance? Because I will remind you, we're all trying to gear up towards goal setting. And I do think like the tree ordinance is something he and I keep talking about, and that's been a priority, and we want to bring that forward. So, I think one, education, especially when Hillary gets back, is clearly a conversation we can have. Maybe it's even one of the barbecues we do, as we talk about Yountville Ready. It can not just be emergency, it can be, responsible pet ownership. I think this is definitely a conversation for Yountville in terms of a lot of the dog owners that we have. And then through goal setting, maybe this is something we can have a little bit of like prioritization as we look at, ordinances, and I can put it on the board and then we can talk about it then. And if at that point in April, it's a priority to come back, I am reading. I wasn't aware of what you can and can't do. I'm sort of reading that on the fly in terms of, because I'm not familiar with what they call, what's the BSL, which is breed-specific legislation. It's a legal term, actually. So you can't, there are things you can do. I don't want to say you can't. It's just a matter of priority. So if you're okay with that, I think let's start with education and then have a conversation about priorities when we get to goal setting.
Thank you. You're getting a lot of positive majority head nodding. So with that, let's see, where are we? I think we're finished with our administrative items. Staff presentation and informal reports.
Yeah, I think I'll lead off, then I'll turn it over to Cammie, and then we can go down the row. I know there's some short presentations, and John wanted to talk about the recent storms, so we can give an update. And since Sam's not here, I will talk about the Mardi Gras parade, since that came up earlier. We are scheduling or rescheduling, really, the Yountville Days parade to be a Mardi Gras parade, our first inaugural. That will be on March 1st. The parade will actually begin at 1. We will sort of gather at noon. And we've been getting some, it's always last minute, but we're now getting business interest. We're putting together, I think, what will be a fun series of floats. We're, working with all of you. I think you generally know what the Mardi Gras theme is, which is
party.
But it's it's Fat Tuesday, the day before Lent. It's generally kind of an opportunity to let loose before you give up whatever you choose to give up. But I think it's also a French tradition, and I it started there. I think we sort of thrive on some of our little French traditions, Bastille Day, etc. So we're going to have a mask making craft leading up to that, so you can go to the community center and make your own mask. I do know that 3 of the businesses are participating, and that Bartisona is going to do a Sunday brunch, which will be, I guess, probably New Orleans themed. Saturday evening, there will be a party at the estate, which will be a masquerade ball. And then Madeline's Macaroons, is that what they're called? They're going to be doing crepes up at the park. We also have a gumbo band. A lot of fun ideas, and I think this is the first year, so we're trying to manage expectations. But at the same time, I do believe, in the future, as we think about Yountville Days and we think about bringing people to Yountville during our downtime, like February. This is March 1st, which is late for Mardi Gras, but being able to make this a tradition, I think, is something that we're thinking about, and that's typically kind of a 3-year plan. And Vice Mayor McKee's been part of the TID. They generously contributed $25,000 to the effort, which the town already had about $25,000 budgeted. So we're using those funds to throw this party, and I know you're all hopefully going to participate. We're trying to figure out the staff level, and I'm really just trying to, rally the businesses, because I think Washington Street's such a fun, dynamic corridor. I think they sort of tolerated us in October, and I'm hoping they embrace us in February, March. That's the idea. So, just because too many people, not too many people, but it's a lot of conflicts in October versus this is seeming to be really a positive start. So, more to come on that. We got a couple weeks, but it should be fun. And the only other thing I was going to report, which I know a couple of you were at the last dinner and conversation on Sunday, we are on schedule to come back to council at the next meeting, which will be March 4th, where we're going to bring all these, we talked about it today a little bit. It's just so much information that's been compiled over the last basically year as it relates to the future of the Commons. We're going to frame that in what I've been referring to as conceptual approval. So don't expect like you're going to be asked to vote on a specific plan. What we're going to be asking you to do is filter, everything that you've heard from the community and what you've read from the information that's been put out, and give us, some direction so we can, as I've been saying, take another year to really get the specifics nailed down, including the legal or the entitlement process and financing, et cetera, and make sure that, we can build something that is, what I think this community is really excited about. So, most of the feedback has been really positive, and I will do my best on March 4th along with Brendan and Carrie to, we'll have the model here, and we can get your feedback finally as the final step of this first phase of the visioning. So, excited about that. Cami.
Thank you. I would just like to remind all the members of the public that we do still have an open recruitment for our Parks and Recreation Commission. So we invite members of the public to apply online if they're interested, or share with their friends and family. And that recruitment, the term would be ending on January 20th, 2027. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Town Council. So the town recently issued a request for proposals for firms to conduct a cost allocation plan to help the town transition the repair and replacement funds 81 and 82 into internal service funds. And we did receive a few responses, and after review have decided to partner with Wildan Financial Services for this project, so that is going to kick off soon. Also, we appreciate the Town Council's approval of the fiscal year 24-25 mid-year budget adjustments today, and after implementing those, we will continue crafting the proposed mid-cycle adjustments, which, as the town manager mentioned, will be presented at the May 20th meeting, and that again will be focused on year 2 of the biennial budget, which is fiscal year 25-26.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tomorrow we'll be conducting second interviews for a management analyst position in the Planning and Building Department. So quite excited about that. So hopefully we'll get someone on board sooner rather than later. I'll also be accompanying all 5 ZDRB members to the League of California Cities Planning Commissioner Academy, March 5th through 7th in Santa Rosa. So hopefully that will provide a valuable learning opportunity for everyone. And due to the Academy and the project schedule right now, we'll likely be canceling the March 11th ZDRB meeting. And that's all I have to report.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm John Fernger, Public Works Director. As you're well aware, 2 weeks ago at this time, the town was experiencing quite the atmospheric river, and we've had 2 subsequent atmospheric rivers since then. The February 4th storm yielded 4.28 inches of rain, lifting the water level in Hopper Creek to an unprecedented 8.81 feet, which is about 2.81 feet above flood stage, and that's a level that we have not seen in Hopper Creek since the 2005 New Year's Eve flood. Flood stage typically means that low-lying areas of the town experience inundation while the storm drain infrastructure is working to move all that water out of here, and that's exactly what we experienced. As you're aware, during such events, all 3 divisions of Public Works, the admin, municipal operations, and utilities are working diligently to maintain the public's life and safety during those events, and we're doing the best we can to manage the storm. We had a few follow-up inquiries based on that February 4th storm and some of the storms that we've had after. So one thing I'd like to point out is Hopper Creek is not the flooding source for the town's flood project that protects the Rancho de Napa and Bella Vista neighborhood. Rather, that flooding source is the Napa River. For the February 4th event, the Napa River was only up around 24.7 feet. Historically, that river needs to be up around 30 for us to trigger to really trigger flooding here in Yountville. As such, that storm event didn't rise to the occasion of closing the floodgates at either Bella Vista or Rancho de Napa, but those floodgates are a good example of things that we do to prepare annually for storms like we are having right now. So annually we practice and make sure all the parts and pieces for those floodgates are here, and the staff that would be in town responding to the storm are able to install them. In addition to the floodgates, there's many other town facilities that we maintain annually in order to prepare for the rain. A few key examples are Hopper Creek and Beard Ditch, which get cleaned and dredged annually just to make sure that their capacity is up to carry the water. The Hopper Creek weir and bypass systems are cleared annually. The pipe systems are cleared annually, and the weirs are cleared observationally during each event. So Public Works crews are constantly circling around town, and they're checking those places. Like the best example is here on Fennell, where there's a big grate that collects debris. If they see something there, they'll pull it off to ensure the water can flow through there. Another key another key storm structure that people don't see or aren't aware of is the flood project pump station. So the flood project protects those two neighborhoods. The water that falls into those neighborhoods goes to the flood project pump station, and there are several large pumps that pump that water out of the basin where it collects. That pump station is a critical facility. It gets inspected for proper operation weekly. The normal operation of that pump station is our guys manually operating the pumps, and or it has an automatic level control switch. So if the water rises to a certain level, that switch is intended to turn the pump on. On Tuesday, February 4th, during the afternoon, when we were all, right before we were all here for the meeting, and we were experiencing high rainfall, it was discovered that the automatic water level switch that normally would turn the pumps on didn't trigger their pumps to be turned on. And so during the normal course of going down there and discovering that, our crews turned the pumps on and manually evacuated the water from the basin. So one thing to bear in mind, that automatic float switch is being repaired at this time. In the meantime, while it is being repaired, we have utility crews on standby around the clock to come in and operate the pumps manually to ensure the evacuation of the flood basin until we can get the new automatic float switch in place and operable again. And for the most part, we didn't experience, the flood from February 4th was very scary, but we were able to manage most of that water in the public right-of-way, and we are doing follow-up inspections. One thing to kind of keep in mind is you guys are all familiar with the water utility, the water enterprise and the wastewater enterprise, which are utilities that have a funding source. The stormwater system is an equally important utility that doesn't have ratepayers to pay for the structure that we use to maintain it, so we rely on the general fund for that. And so looking at the storms, it appears right now, based on our observation, that the storms, those bigger storms, are coming more frequently than we have experienced in the past. And so it's time for us to look at that stormwater utility and decide how to, do the next phase of stormwater evaluation and improvement on our system, so we can handle the more frequency of the storms and or the peak of those storms like we experienced on the 4th. And with that, I'm available for any questions, if it's appropriate to have questions right now.
Just the last thing I'll say to add to his last thing is that, again, back to goal setting, we do intend to talk about, and I think we'll be ready by then in terms of, John was going to review what year was the plan, the most recent one, 10 years ago, roughly?
Yeah, the study was 2011, 2012, and the improvements were built in 2015-ish.
Yeah, so we'd like to know kind of what the cost and process to update that if necessary. So we'll be in that position, just so you know, in a month or so. So you can kind of give us direction as part of goal setting if that's something you want us to do.
Okay. That's the one that built the three-weir as well as the overflow into Beard Ditch from
Yes.
Hopper? Okay.
Yes, it looked at the system as a whole, and it ranked 10 to 15 projects, and the ones that removed or managed the most water related to the cost were the ones that were implemented, and the Fennell Weir project is a good example. The shaping of the Hopper Creek at Oak Circle, all of that was part of that other project from 2015.
I think this time Beard Ditch just got full.
Yes.
So, Councilmember Knight, question?
Questioning, comment. I just want to thank Director Ferns for your report, and again, please thank the community staff and the waste treatment staff again for their dedication work on that evening. That was a surprise to drive up from Napa and see as much water just flooding this whole area, and it was also kind of, your report also was interesting because I know for years and years we've worried about Napa River flood levels, but it seems like the opportune time now to really look into and to understand we have a flood stage level for Hopper Creek, which I see at Jefferson and at Jefferson and Creek Street when that water is moving down and it gets up to the top of that bridge. I know it's moving into the streets and the lower parts of town, so it'll be good. I think it makes sense for us to review the hydrology of Hopper Creek and how we can improve water flow. So thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to our last item, which is council external meeting reports. Just because we're talking about water and flooding, I'll go first. I've had 2 meetings of the Flood Control and Water Conservation District, one on, February 11th, and then we had one 2 days ago as well. We're gonna be having like a couple every month now because of all the work we're doing. So basically, the vast majority of our agenda is closed session, again, where we're negotiating with the landowners along this section of the flood wall, and those that we're not successful with, then we move on to litigation for eminent domain, which also, before trials ever happen, as everybody knows, there's still lots of negotiation that happens at that step. So one thing I did want to mention, just kind of a quick summary of one section of the section that we're working on now. This is the section that's going from the River Terrace Inn, if everyone knows where that is, on Silverado Trail down to the Elks Lodge. So we've got 95% of the design is complete, and the Army Corps of Engineers is reviewing that. It's going out for bid at the end of this year, and we'll be starting work in April of 2026 and should be done in 2 years. So this is still being funded 50% by the federal government, and then 50% of old Measure A that's sunsetted, but we still have money in Measure A. So the whole project will be almost $100 million. And then, let's see, LAFCO, we also met, and we finally are hiring a consultant. We've got St. Helena now on board so we can do their municipal service review. We've been working on moving that to getting them ready for that for 12 years, so that was a big milestone. The other action item, we did extend water service. The Napa Valley grape growers are moving into the Oakville pump station near Rutherford Grill up on Highway 29. And so the only reason we're extending water service is strictly for their fire sprinkler use. So because they're now going to have a lot more occupancy in that building with the grape growers. City Selection Committee, we met last month as well. We appointed the new mayor in American Canyon, Pierre Washington, as the Napa County rep on the executive board of ABAG, and Mayor Paul Doring in St. Helena as the alternate. We also appointed David Oro, a council member in American Canyon, to be the new alternate for American Canyon on LAFCO. And then we submitted 3 nominations to the County Board of Supervisors for MTC. They were Bernie Naves and Liz Alessio and Amber Manfrey. And then, so we made the nominations, and then the Napa Board of Supervisors chose Amber as the primary for ABAG or MTC, and then Liz Alessio as the alternate. So I think that takes care of all my meetings. Yes. Anybody else have meetings? Nope. All right, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn to February the 4th. That Tuesday, right? March 4th? March 4th at 3 p.m. in this.
Move to adjourn to March 4th.
I'll second that.
I'll just do all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and abstain. Okay, good evening, everybody. So. The light is off.
You just seeing if you could, because I also saw in the archives.
There were no agendas, there were no, yeah.
I saw one for